Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Seller Sessions. I have with me today one of my favorite guests. I'm just biased. What can I say? I have with me Mr. Danny McMillan in the house today. Let's go, let's go. Good morning, Danny, or good evening for you.
Good afternoon. Yeah, it's good
Good
afternoon
afternoon.
here in the UK.
Excuse-moi. Good afternoon. How are you feeling after Billion Dollar Seller Summit? You killed it on the
Nah, I'm still the jet lag's still brutal. So yeah, still recovering from that, but back in getting the work done as we should.
as we
Um,
should,
yeah.
because we're responsible adults.
Well,
We
we try
don't
to
just
be, unless we're out on the road. Yeah, and then we become slightly irresponsible, but responsible at the same time.
responsible at the same time. That's what
Yeah,
happens, as we get older and we get, wiser, we tend to want to do
still
the
make
right
mistakes.
thing. Like work, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Well, it's so good to have you, Danny, on today because me and you, we have this almost an ongoing conversation that at some point we decide to jump in. It's like, oh, let's let people know that we're talking about some mindset stuff. So
Yeah.
today we're talking about the dynamic between men and women. And I would
Yeah.
love nothing more than for you to kick this off because this
Yeah.
is in your wheelhouse. You're kind of a guru in the
I don't know
men.
about guru. No, I've been with my wife 28 years, and it's interesting how things change over that period of time and the stuff that you learn. And I'm launching a new project called Men Plus 40, and the way I see it is, we've seen how women have leveled up, right? But then I've seen that guys haven't, and maybe they've not had the right signal to level up as well. And when I speak to a lot of ladies in the space who are good friends of mine, they go to me, Dan, where's all the good guys gone? And I'm like, well, they're around, but yeah, but I need, I've got standards, I've got levels and stuff like that. And so what you'll see is, as a lady becomes more successful, does a thing which is great, which she should, and it's brilliant. Um, she looks around, and maybe her selection pool of men are not on what the expectations that they were like. Yeah. So it's interesting is that what I'm trying to do is get guys to level up alongside as well. I mean, if you look at dating statistics, I think it was a 2008 report. It says that on those sites, I mean, a lot of us are married or in partnership, etc., etc. But what's kind of interesting is that it says, the statistics says they found that 80% of men are unattractive, which is fair enough. I think if you're on the dating site, a guy isn't necessarily going to wear makeup or anything else, and if he hasn't taken care of himself, there's very much limitations. So my thing is that you should take care of yourself. And I want to say to guys, look, you might be pushing 40, 45, or whatever you may be, but your life isn't over, because most guys don't normally reach their peak until about 35. What I mean by that is that they have their most resources, their assets, taking care of themselves, etc., etc. So they think that, they hit 40 and it's game over. And it's also in relationships, you still got to take care of yourself. If you let yourself go in a relationship, that can become unattractive. And you've got those situations that we see that 54% of marriages end. You see that about 50% of marriages have dead bedrooms. And there's going to be many reasons behind that, right? And a lot of it is that if you take care of yourself, look after yourself, health and everything else, take care of your body, your mind, your spirit and everything else, that's only going to benefit the people around you. So really, it's kind of interesting in the dynamics of communication. You can back me up here. Is that you might get disappointed with someone because they didn't pick up your hints. Now sometimes you have to hit the fisherman over the head with a wet fish and tell them what you want. Do you see what I mean? And then guys have also got to read between the lines, and it's trying to understand those dynamics in relationships. Whereas I feel that women are very well socially calibrated and have been for a young age, but not all men are. And so that can lead to frustration into friendships, relationships, and everything else, because you can miss signals. Does that make sense?
Right, absolutely. So do you feel like it starts from taking care of oneself, like your physical, or are you talking about not only physical, but actually working on their mindset as well. Because you said a lot of men don't even know where to start. Like
Yeah.
you're right, and you're right. Where is that starting point? Is one leading to the next thing? Let's say, okay, I'm gonna start taking care of my physical, which will then lead to me wanting to maybe change my behaviors towards women, or
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think the key thing I'll put it down to, so if you look at the extreme ends of both ends, right? Go and look on TikTok, go and look on YouTube, and there's warfare out there, right? And it's normally in the younger age range, granted, but they are the future generations, right? So on one end, you've got like Red Pill, the Manosphere, the Doomers, MGTOWs, Black Pillars, and all this kind. And at the other end, you've got ladies who were like, hey, they'll finish their TikToks with say, hey girls, stay toxic, and that somewhere at the end of those extremes, somewhere in the middle, is a good, healthy relationship. Do you see what I mean? And I
right,
think what happens with those kind of things is if we take one end of the spectrum and the other end of the spectrum, what you could say is that these people are carrying trauma, and then if someone's watching that content and they've been traumatized from their relationship, they're not actually improving. And that's where things like therapy and stuff come in handy, like a framework. Let's just say you were in a bad relationship. You might look at all men through them same lens because a man treated you badly. A guy could get turned over by a lady and look at all women through that. But not everyone is the same. Not every relationship's the same, right? And then you only got to look at the situation. Give an example somewhere like high profile case. Look at Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Now, I see that coming a long, long time ago. And I see what was happening, but the tide turned by the time they got to court. And we all found out that clinically or non clinically, Amber Heard on her side is like they diagnosed her from the distance as having borderline personality disorder, right? Now, on the flip side, if you look at Johnny, Johnny is like a codependent. If you look at his history and his relationship with his mum, he is then living through the situation of Amber Heard because on a subconscious level, he's reflecting back, and that's the attraction in women. Does that make sense?
right.
So what you've got to look at, there's two elements here. Is like you want to enter a relationship so it's healthy, and that it's your job to sort out your own trauma. Get yourself mentally, physically fit, or whatever you mean, to say you're in balance, and then go into a healthy relationship, because a relationship shouldn't be codependent. Everyone should be, each party complements each other. Does that make sense? So if you've got two healthy people coming together that are not codependent in any way, there isn't an access of narcissism and stuff like that. Generally, healthy people come together, they end up being really, really good, strong relationships. But
Mhm.
this is where the responsibility comes on both parties. If you've had trauma, work through that. Go to do what you need to do to work through that, because your you'll become much more happier, and your perception of other people will be more healthier as well. And I
Mhm.
think the problem that you get is that if you look at that heavy end on the red pill kind of side, it's almost like saying, "Hey, I'm traumatized. You're traumatized. Forget therapy. We're brothers. Who needs therapy when you've got brothers?" And then it just turns into a bit of a mess. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? And then that's not healthy for anyone. Do you see
That's
what I'm
so
saying?
mentioned that. Right. You mentioned one really good point, Danny. You said, people are looking, it's almost like they're looking for the other half, right? The one
Yeah,
that will like fill whatever maybe desires or dreams or something that you're along. But really, in reality, that is actually the problem when we are only halves trying to find another half instead
yeah,
of working on ourselves and getting ourselves whole and getting to the point where you can meet somebody else that's also whole, and then
yeah.
together you can decide to have a harmonious relationship and whatnot. And I know you knew I was going to ask this because we talked about this. I want to talk a little bit about Andrew Tate, and why do you think that took off so heavily? Because it's almost like an outcry from the world, right? Like we have this crazy misogynistic person, right? That now young men are looking up to. And, you're not a woman because you would know, but there's a lot of already Facebook groups where a lot of women are starting to talk about this because
Yeah.
it's really affecting those people around. So all these men that have been like hibernating, sleeping like bears, right?
Yeah.
In the winter. Now they see this Andrew Tate and is like, oh my God, he's our salvation. Let's all be pricks and assholes. So what's
Yeah.
your take on that?
I think, like when, as I said, because I've looked at all of this stuff,
Of course.
online.
I
I
know you.
always swore, I always swore to myself, I'll never talk about this stuff because that's not my wheelhouse. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in what we're trying to do with Men Plus 40 on the other side, right? So it's, I don't want to be in those back and forth kind of things. Now, what I will say about it without commenting on his content, what I would say is he's become a master of attention, right? And in what he says, there is stuff that's actually true, but there's also stuff that isn't, but it's the way he says it, right? He does it in such an outrageous way that there's so many clips out there, it goes viral, right? But if you take some of what he says without all the elements to antagonize people, there are some truths in there. Not everything he says is incorrect. It's his opinion, it's from his perception, but I totally understand why people would get upset by it completely and get completely triggered by it. But he's a maverick in the sense that's what his goal was, to do that. So I'm not supportive of a lot of what he says by any stretch of the imagination. But when you look around and you look at an objective point of view and you go, actually, that little bit there, that bit there. But what happens, it gets covered in all the outrageous stuff. So I'm not saying I support it in any sense whatsoever. But I think as smart human beings, we have to look between the lines and go, why was that? I mean, if you look at what he does, he's now the number one guy on the internet in terms of searches. Yeah. And it's upsetting the world. And I think he's just been taken off of Instagram. He's just been taken off of TikTok and stuff. Now, on the flip side of that, and this is in no way supporting, equally on the other end, you've got women talking about the same thing against men being completely outrageous, but he never gets taken down. So
For
I'm not
example, like what?
like some women will. There's videos where they'll go use men as they should be dogs on leads, and they should be used for foodie dates, and just take them for their money girlfriend and all this kind of stuff, and then finish their video and say, don't forget, girls, stay toxic. So it's encouraging that, and I don't think either end should be encouraged whatsoever. But obviously, one end's been banned because he's become so big and number one searched. He's been taken down, and I'm not supporting any of that. But what I'm trying to say is there are two ends of the spectrum, and what you got to look at is not everyone is the same. There's a percentage of people are like that. Like there's, like if we look at the situation of the 100 most dangerous people in the world are all men, all of them, all the top 100. However, if you aggregated the whole world and looked at the most dangerous people, it's not just violence. So it's about a 60-40, 70-30 split. Why is that? Because damage to your reputation, irreparable damage, sexual innuendos, and malicious gossip. So whilst there's that physical end, there's the verbal end that can just destroy lives, even if it's not true. Do you see what I mean? Even if someone was in a situation where someone got upset with someone, made up a pack of lies, right, about the guy, even if it's found to not be true, that stigma is still there. Do you see what I mean? So we do have a world out here where if we open our eyes to see what's going on, most people know what the rights and the wrongs of the world are, and you're going to have an internal ethical compass as well, So can we get off the Andrew Tate thing? I don't
Yeah,
really
no,
want to talk.
I really wanted your take, and I already knew it because again you talked about it.
Yeah,
It's just so interesting how it's almost as if overnight he became this. magnet. And I know it hasn't been overnight. I mean, I've,
Well, no,
just
he's a former four-time kickboxing champion. He's from Luton in the UK. He's got a brother Tristan as well. It isn't as like outrageous as say as what he does, but Andrew was on Big Brother 10 years ago here in the UK. So it's not just overnight. This has been building for a period of time, and I think what's happened is it's all gone viral. So now you've got a situation whereby um, they have multiple accounts and people were making money by taking Andrew Tate clips. So you had more and more channels. So it just becomes like, he's everywhere, he's everywhere, he's everywhere, And once you add all the outrage and everything else. But yeah, it's just that stuff's gone crazy. And that's not my wheelhouse. I'm not interested in any of that. I want, I want men to feel peace. I want them to focus on being good people, being honourable. Even like some of the content I'm doing with the Men Plus 40. I done one on chivalry yesterday, and I'll post it this week. So I've been doing daily clips. I'm just starting to build slowly on Instagram. Then we'll do the podcast where I want to bring men and women and have these roundtable conversations, and have these really important conversations. How do we improve relationships? How do we bring people together? But
I
I
love
think,
bringing the feminine aspect to it, because it's, just like with entertainment and all the other conversations, it's easy when it's just like one side speaking, and then you tend to make your decision from that. But
yeah,
having an open discussion, between people who have relationships or are single, maybe, or we
yeah,
can start with our own industry. I mean, there's a lot of things that we see going to events, and it's not
yeah.
always the nicest thing. So for you
I know.
bringing,
I had to deal with something last week. I think like when I look at it, and I've been looking at it for a couple of years, and like where is the balance here? Because I think a couple of things that we've got to address as well is there's this desire of power, and it's seductive, and that's for both parties. Men and women desire power, some more than others. And I think in a relationship, if the balance of power is misaligned, one of them's okay, the other one's chasing a relationship or whatever, and they're unhappy. But I think a lot of the time when people are hungry and chasing power, it's because someone took power away from them, so they overcompensate. But if you have boundaries and you hold down your own power and don't take nonsense, but politely, then no one can take your power away, and you don't need to take anyone else's power, because you can ask for what you want, and if they say no, respect it. Do you see what I mean? That's healthy. It's healthy for someone to say no, and you don't explode. You go, okay, you respect that as a decision, and that's for both sides.
mm, yeah, most people don't like now. It's almost like they want to show up and you know uh show you different, right? You say no, and it's like, oh, what else can I say to make you change your mind?
Well, it
um
doesn't help when you get people tell you in sales, ask 6 times, don't accept no. That's a boundary violation. When I get people on the phone who cold call me, right, I'll be honest, that's when I get rude. Someone cold called me, it's got my number without my permission, and then I say, I'm not interested, thank you. When they then go to speak, I said, what did I tell you the first time? And then they get upset with me. It's like, well, no, actually, you're invading my privacy. I didn't ask you to call. This is a boundary violation. Does that make sense?
yeah.
So sometimes you have to taper up down your boundaries. And I think men need to also look at the boundary, be more self-aware with the boundaries around them, right? So one, they should have boundaries, and also you should respect others. And I think a lot of this is what it kind of comes down to, is if you can recognize those things. Like you said, we have incidents all the time. I mean, at least in the last 2 years, there's been a dozen incidents. One where you were there, it wasn't related to you. We won't do names. Do you know what I mean? That situation, it was like I calmed it and they went on. But I dealt with something last week when we were away. Nothing to do. It's never really to do with the conference. It's always the fringe parties at 2 o'clock in the morning. Now you could argue, why are you out at that time? Why are you in that environment? And that's correct. But there was a situation where we just got chatting and was talking to an off-duty police officer, and this guy come over and grabbed up someone with us. And I looked at the guy. I said, "What are you going to do about it?" He said, "I'm off duty." I said, no, it's your fucking duty. It doesn't matter. I went ballistic. Next thing I know, I turn around, they're gone because a guy who was with me, he's the Brazilian, big guy. He just like shifted the guy out there. And it was like that whole bit of chaos finished in a few seconds. But it's like, how can you just walk up to someone and start grabbing them up and expect that to be okay? You know?
Well, a lot of people do that. They might not do that when they're sober, but having a drink or two kind of eases that, that boundaries that they have, right? So it
Yeah.
makes them feel like, oh, it's okay. This is the environment I'm drinking. They're going to forgive me tomorrow because I was drunk, and I don't longer accept that excuse. Like, I don't
Yeah.
accept that excuse from people. Just because you said, oh, I'm sorry, I was drunk, that means nothing to me. Right? Like, actually, now I got to the point where if you're if you're drunk and you're trying to talk to me, I will not have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
I just won't. I said, if especially if we're at a conference or something, and it happens a lot, people will come up to me, they see me speak or whatever, or they just want to be next to me because I'm fun. But then, they tend to cross that line because I am friendly, right? So
Yeah.
some people tend to mistake that as, oh, maybe she's like flirting. And if I see you are drunk, I will not have a conversation with you. And somebody did get upset at a conference this week, and I said, I would love to have a conversation with you tomorrow. It's just not going to happen tonight. And people get kind of shocked, like, oh my god, now she's a bitch, right? Now I'm the bitch. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not even worried about it. But alcohol does have a part in how much people push, and it goes.
Yeah.
It's not just men. It's
Yeah.
not just men. Women
Oh,
can.
I tell you,
I
I know
know.
it's not just men. I can tell you numerous of times where boundaries have been violated. Trust me, trust me. But I'm not interested in talking about that. Like, I want to focus on guys like, take care of your own shit. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Don't think about double standards and
we
stuff like that.
started you started with making sure that your physical is all right, and it's not just about like going in the gym and looking like I'm actually taking care of myself, but really inside taking care of yourself, right? Like, you're a great example. I mean, you've been doing the workout challenge ever since COVID. How long has it
Yeah.
been?
It's
No.
coming up to 2 years in October.
2 years, 2 years.
Yeah.
And I see all the people that are reposting. I see so many people. Like, that's an amazing example. So it's not just looking good. What are some other things that you and other men can do to kind of get themselves aligned and onto the right path?
I think a lot of it is there's a story that's been sold. Just be a nice guy and make her laugh. That isn't enough to last a long term relationship. What about protection, provision, being kind, surprises? All of these different elements that you forget. And I think what's happened is like there's a difference between being a nice guy and a kind guy. And if you read the book No More Mr. Nice Guy, basically what they explain in there is a nice guy is a covert contract, and most women are repelled by nice guys because since a very young age, ladies have known that men are going to look at them physically, and it's like, well, what does he want, And if you're a nice guy but you're always like passive and friendly and don't have a backbone and don't disagree or anything like that, how can they trust you? At least with a kind guy, they will tell you with respect what you need to hear with respect on the words, right? They also know that that person's got boundary. There's certain things that they have standards for and they won't tolerate certain behaviors, right? And everyone, each party always needs checking in some way, shape or form. Like you would say yourself, what would you prefer, a nice guy or a kind guy? Would you know where you stood with a kind guy versus a nice guy? Do you know what I mean? And I think once you say that, but let's just say that you're a nice guy and you can make someone laugh. What about the rest of it? Ladies still need to find a connection of attraction as well.
Mm.
So there's so many things that you need to do as a guy to create that balance. We live in a world now, right, where both parties work and both earning money and everything else. So the game's leveled up. And so there's certain things to last in a relationship. When you start at the very beginning of the relationship, everyone puts their best foot forward. And then normally it's one who drops off or they both drop off. And then there's incompatibility come along and stuff. But if people take care of themselves, like if you can take care of your mental health and your physical health, you're going to be able to serve the people around you better. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
it's just like trying to explain to guys, like, if you look at guys in their 40s now, I'm coming up to 47. And whilst I don't have a six pack or anything else, right? I'm in a shape that if you look around, I'm in shape of a guy in maybe 500 to 1,000 men. That's different. Do you know what I mean? This is why I'm saying it's not that hard to level up. You control what you put in your mouth and you get to the gym. And the great thing about what the gym does, forget all this bad boy lifting iron and all that kind of stuff, is discipline. Like you go to the gym because you know your physical and mental health and everything else, it has a tremendous effect. It helps your family, it gives you more energy, more time with your children and stuff like that. Once you get discipline in that area, it makes you discipline elsewhere because you forget your feelings. If I go to the gym based on every day how I feel, I probably go about 20% of the time. But you do it anyway, and then when you get there, you feel better about it. You regenerate the energy. Do you see what I mean? And then you set that discipline in. Then you've got confidence. Confidence turns into competence. So let's just say you're a guy that is, he's single. You could go on the dating apps, right? And you could message 100 women, get a conversion rate of 2 or 3, 2 of them will drop out, and then there's 1 left. And you've done all that work, and then that's gonna destroy their self-esteem because the guys do all the chasing on the apps, right? I mean, guys have swipe 50, 60%. I think women will swipe back 3%. They're only interested in the top, right? So instead of doing all that on a dating app, you could actually go to the gym. You get into shape. People notice. And if people see that you respect yourself, they will also respect you. And that for a lady can be attractive as well. So this is where I say, come back, instead of focusing outwardly, focus inwardly. And I'm not talking about being solipsistic and narcissistic and taking care of only you and being selfish. I'm saying if you can take care of you in order to take care of everyone else. If you're unhealthy and you're ill all the time and you're out of shape and everything else, there's a lot of medical conditions which will instantly clear up once you're back in shape. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the whole point is discipline. Discipline, then the confidence. The confidence turns into competence. Competence and confidence is attractive in some cases. Does that make sense?
And that is beautiful. I love that you broke it down. I want to go back just to one little thing. I never read the book No More Mr. Nice Guy. I would love to. It sounds very interesting. And then you pose a very amazing question, actually, that a lot of women ask themselves. A lot of women do choose the asshole over the nice guy. And
there's data on that.
This is why. This is the explanation that I found that kind of made sense for me, because there's many books you can read on this. But what I read, and I wish I remembered the name, was that men that are assholes in a way, right? Quotation, are the closest to what a real man is like, that women tend to be attracted to that. So what do I mean by that? I mean, the assholes usually look like they're stronger, they're more protective. They will be the ones. So now women, they cannot find this middle ground where, men can be manly, but also be protective and sweet and romantic and all this. But it's almost as this middle part has gone away, and we have like very two opposites, the men that are just like Andrew Tates of the world. And then you have the ones that are just so nice that the mom taught him how to open the door and bring flowers and all this. And women are like, yeah, this guy is really, really great, but there's no spark because they don't feel. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there's the essence of missing. Let me quickly explain something, and you can agree, disagree. Here's a theory, and here's some data behind it, right? So if you look at 4 levels of attraction, what you'll find is there's a comment here. What have we got? Okay. There is data out there that the dark triad traits are highly attractive to a big array of women, right? And if you look at something like, and I know it's only a fantasy, but if you look at one of the biggest franchises of all time, you've got 50 Shades of Grey. Now, it's a fantasy. Let's back this up. And it's not a very well-written book, but it was the fastest selling book in the UK. It's done about 3 to 4 billion as a franchise. Now, let's look at who Christian Grey is. High status, successful, financially well-to-do, highly functioning narcissistic psychopath with a dungeon downstairs that he takes his women into the lair to. Do you know what I mean? And I know that's only just a fantasy, but the
I,
point I'm trying,
I never read the books, nor did I watch the
yeah,
TV.
and that's not for everyone, because I spoke to some other people and go, "That's you're out," Then I'm just giving an example. If that becomes such a hit, there's a level where people find interest, whether that's on just a fantasy level or in a real life level. And this is why I think, how do I use these words? The worst thing you could do with a lady is bore her. She needs fun. And that's the thing, right? You need the chemical adjustment in your mind. Like, so if that guy who is emotionally unavailable and you're chasing him, you're excited. But if you've got the guy with his flowers chasing you all the time, phoning you 15 times a day, double texting, there's got to be a balance, right? You feel like that's overawed. It's too much attention. What you're looking for is the right amount of attention from the right person. Would you
Mhm.
agree? And you need to be fun. You need to them adjustments. If you're in a relationship and it goes like that all the time, you're going to get bored.
Mhm.
And so I think that's where the attraction side comes from, where women may pick men like that because they're exciting. But then what happens? They get put through the ringer and then, come out the other side traumatized and then take that into their next relationship. Do you see what I mean? So there has to be a balance. Where do you find the line in between? Where you can have fun, someone takes care of themselves, they take care of you, protection, provision, have fun, and attraction, connection, all of those things, they all play an important role without being an arsehole or without not having a spine and stand on your word.
Mhm.
Because if you have someone, I think the biggest problem I see relationship when guys come to me and they say, we, I haven't slept with my wife in a long time. And 9 times out of 10, I would say, where did you lose the respect?
Mhm.
They said, what do you mean? I said, she doesn't respect you. She can love you and not want to sleep with you, but she can love you and respect you. And the chances are, if she respects you, that would return. You've got to work out where she lost respect. Did you promise her a load of stuff and didn't follow through? Did you get to the stage where she married you and she went, that's the guy, we're going to go on this journey together and we're going to reach here? And what you done was sat on the sofa, put on 50, 60 pounds, did nothing, didn't take her out, didn't do these things, and just gave up on your life. She's going to look over and say, I'm very disappointed, and then lose respect. It's the same thing when a lady would turn her husband into one of her children. How can there be any sexual attraction there? Because she's not a mum. She doesn't want to mum him. She wants him to be a man. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's where sometimes guys get a rut, like they miss, because they're so focused on being nice rather than kind, and they have a lack of boundaries. It means they become unattractive
Mhm.
because they've been told make her laugh and be nice, and that's all you need.
Mhm. But you
The
know what I
problem
know?
is the extremes. It's like, don't be an arsehole. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. You know what I notice also is like, men and women both, it's like when they break up from somebody or they're going through a divorce, that
Yeah,
is when they start looking into improving their health, improving their mind,
yeah.
improving all of this. And it's like, it's almost as if like they're waiting for that moment. And I never see anybody that's in a relationship or married that's like, you know what, let me get better right now for this person or for
Yeah,
myself.
yeah.
It's always after, you can tell somebody broke up with somebody because they started working out. And
Here's the other thing, Isa, and let me know if you agree with me on this. When a woman says it's over, she left the relationship mentally 6 months to a year before.
Mm,
So normally there isn't a way to recover on that side.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with guys it's going to be different. And what I would say to guys is like, let's say you're in a relationship and you realize if you are actually going to take analysis of yourself and be self-aware and go, what are all my faults? Look in the mirror and see what you promised and you didn't deliver. Then go and fix it. It will take you 6 months. It'll take you a year. Get in the gym. So your partner might see, mm, looking good, walks past and, noticed he's tightened up a little bit, and then in the attraction, he's taking care of himself, he's got better with stuff, or he starts a business, or do you see what I mean? And I said the worst thing that can come out of this, you can do all the self improvement in the relationship, and if that person still doesn't want you, you've just opened up a new door of options
Mhm.
because you're going to be more attractive to the person you're more compatible with. So there is no loss in leveling up. There's none. It can only benefit whether you stay together or leave. Once you get through, you've got divorce and all that kind of stuff. But if you've leveled up and you've created more value in the world, because that's what we've got to look at, right? If you, everyone will, like people that I know, ladies will turn around and go, I'm a queen, right? And you're not on my level, or not always say that, but I'm a queen. So if she's a queen and she's going to look at her options around her, who she chooses, who's she going to choose? The one with the most value in terms of the attraction cues, assets, and everything else. Who's the most rounded out of all of those? So a guy has to become, meaning that the more valuable he becomes, the more attraction there could be there in certain cases. Does that make sense? Because if we talk about women as the prize, then if they're the prize, they're going to make a selection. Most women will have options, whether in a relationship or not, right? So a lady's going to go, who is my best option out of these people? And what they want to do is they want to choose the best option, especially if they're going to have children with them. They've got to make a bet. If I'm going to have a child with this person, what does it look like on the back end? What does it look like 10, 20 years from now? Does that make sense? Yeah. So I always say to guys, you have to raise your value. If your value's at the same side, like same height, and you go on the dating apps and you get no results, your results are telling you you're not getting these results for a reason. Yeah. And it's different in terms of a guy can go from being one way to being handsome because he can level up in all different areas, dress better. He could get a better job, work on his mindset, be in shape. Do you see what I mean? Once you add all of those elements together, that guy can be from over here could suddenly become, to some people, handsome. He may not be, he might not be The Rock, or he might not be, who's it, Jason Momoa, but do you know what I mean? That guy's genetically gifted. But you see where I'm coming from? He can make improvements to a point where he maxes every area of his life out to increase his value.
I love that you mentioned, the back end. It's like you're throwing in some Amazon terms too. It's like, make sure your back end is
No, but when I say the back end, you're looking at long term, right?
No,
can I trust this person?
Exactly.
Do you think I can have a long union with this person?
It's
and
not
more
just
importantly,
is that. Yeah.
I'm going to raise children with this guy. When you're most vulnerable is when you're pregnant, right? You want him to be around. So you need to make sure that you're making the right decision for the right reasons. Does that make sense? Yeah. So there's a lot to think about when you're going to give birth. Giving birth's dangerous as it is. I've lost 2 of my children, or my wife has, for us. Do you see what I mean? And so when you think of all the calculations both parties have got to make, it's really important that you pick the right life partner. And we don't get it right. A lot of people get it right 50% of the time because that's why 50% of marriages fail.
How long have you been married again?
We've been married 21 years and been together 28.
Congratulations.
We were kids when we got together.
Congratulations.
And trust me, it's not always been easy. The toughest times is the poorest times. When you skip, that's the toughest times. So we had a run about 10 years where it was really, really tough. When I'm like, can't go on holiday.
How do you keep pushing through? Like, how do you keep showing up?
What's that?
How do you keep showing up?
Well, you go through stages. You have to show up. But the thing is, I think what we forget is that when we talk about showing up, you can have just about the version that's in survival mode, right? Because if a guy goes within, and then you've got showing up who's in confidence mode. Does that make sense? So let's just say you're in a tough area of your life. You'll show up every day, but you're not the 100% you can give you 100%. So you'll go through stages like that. And marriages are tough. And they're like business, they still need to be nurtured. They need to be watered. Like we talk about, grass is green on the other side. But what about if you water your own garden and take the time to do that, So yeah, it's like being single's tough, being married's tough, being divorced is tough.
Why do you think a lot of people just get divorced? Do you think in their heads it's just easier for them to find somebody else? Because I don't know anybody that's just like, I love being single and alone for the rest of my life. Like everybody.
No, this is the thing, and I think it's a McKinsey report. It says that by 2030. I might have misquoted. It says 50% of women will be childless from 30 onwards because they don't want to settle. Like they're not going to settle. That's the difference, I think. Like if a lady says, you know, I can do without sex or even bad sex, and live a single life. Do you know what I mean? They can do that. You know, I think it's different for guys because on a biological level, I mean, if we go back to the beginning of the time, one of our jobs was procreation, right? Our jobs was problem solving, and our problem solving is procreation. And I think obviously that's bled down the bloodlines over the years, and and that's where a guy gets his intimacy. And I think that's where the shaming and stuff is a bit unfortunate. But guys, and most guys don't even realize this, is that where they get their intimacy and the connection through their partner is through that activity. And when that stops, that's where they struggle to connect. And this is where arguments start and everything else. And that's not to put it on the other party by any stretch. But I think if we get more understanding of that, like, a lady may stop sleeping with their partner because they're unattractive, or they feel they're unattractive, they're not going to say that because they're not going to have that conversation. It's a very awkward conversation to have in terms of regulation of self-esteem and stuff. That's why I'm saying to guys, look, take care of yourself. Be the best version of you. That's it, really. It's not focus on the other parties of the double standards and this, that, and the other. Well, she did this and he did that and da-da-da. If you're focused on being the best version of yourself, normally the world around you adjusts with you and it can be a good place.
That is beautiful to say. It's such an important topic because it's what we don't realize is these relationships that we're having behind closed doors, right, that nobody sees, it really affects us in every single way of our life. It affects our
Mm.
business, it affects our relationship with our friends, with our parents, with really anyone. And it's almost like everybody wants to hide that part, like I don't want people to see that because it will change the outlook. And
Yeah.
that's another thing. And you tend to make friends with people and then you do find out and you're like, holy shit, I had no idea you're going through this.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a topic that should be discussed more often, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why people want to keep it behind closed doors because people want to keep privacy and stuff like that. But I just want to see, the point of the Men Plus 40 project. I want to see a better dance between both parties. I want to see a bit more kindness. I want to see a bit more, not them and this and the and da 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 and this, that, and the other. Just let's play nice.
I love what you said, a better dance between both parties. That is
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah,
That is
I
beautiful.
think, and I think that's where misunderstandings come because um, we are biologically different, right? We are wired slightly different, and they're polarities, and that's why often, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, that's why it works because there's a level polarities, but we still need to add that level of being committed and compromising for both parties. Do you
Mhm.
see what I mean? There has to be an understanding and there has to be a compromise. And it's about being in a relationship is about reciprocation. Once you break the chain of reciprocation, it becomes unbalanced. And this is where I go back to the whole point of, when someone says, I'm trying to think, there's a quote out there is the one who loves the least owns the relationship. I mean, how fucked up is that to
That's terrible.
even to think that way? But people do, or they'll consume content that suggests you should. And I think what they're doing that for is because maybe they have an attachment, like they're not very good with attachment, in a healthy way. And so maybe they're scared of abandonment. And what happens, they operate in that way because that's their way of protecting themselves from being abandoned. By owning the relationship and loving less, but forcing down the feelings, that becomes problematic. But it's so complex because once you start getting into personality disorders and stuff like that, going back to Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, it's two codependents together that had trauma one way or another, right? And it's sad, really.
Yeah.
On one side, everyone hated Johnny for a couple of years because it all went public. On the other side, they all hated Amber. But you still still have to feel for these people because they've been traumatized, and it's locked into their programming, and it brought them together, and it creates that explosion. It's the same with not what's that word that people use is, it's not soulmate. There's something else.
Twin flame.
Twin flame. Again, that's a codependent relationship. Do you know what I mean? It's like if someone says to you, if someone
I knew the answer to that.
why did you know the answer? Yeah. If someone comes to you and says, "You're my twin flame," run.
Okay.
Because that is unhealthy. Now, what there's two sides of it. On the psychological side, they'll say that is two codependents together, which they are, because they can bring out the best or worst in each other. And sometimes what happens is they come together, they bring out the worst in each other, both walk away, both get better, both come back together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But rarely would you see situations like that work. So I would just say is that stuff like that, you have to be careful. You see the way that ladies has to be socially calibrated to work out what does that person want, what is he about, etc., etc. And you're looking for all these red flags. Yeah, guys should do the same.
Mm.
Guys should do the same.
You don't think they don't? What do you think,
No.
guys?
I think what happens, they just get blinded by beauty. So I always say to people, look, you're in a relationship, you've fallen head over heels for their beauty, right? But you feel that there's not working, and it's like you're not feeling like you're being treated right.
Mm.
Take an inventory of all of their traits, because then what happens, you can separate the beauty from the person, and then you can get a new set of eyes. But I think once they go boom, because they're biologically programmed to that. If you look and you believe in evolutionary biology and psychology, right? We all have these attraction cues. So when and this is not my words before I get cancelled. When you look at if you look at the evolution of desire, David M. Buss and the other people, I think it's Amber, someone who wrote the book. They wrote it together, and they will talk about male and female attraction cues, right? So they will say is like the hip to waist ratio, the backside, the breasts, the lips. These are all fertility cues going back a millennia. Do you see what I mean? And something like attraction, that instant attraction, is a biological response. You can't cover it over. You shouldn't be ashamed of it. That's what it is. And then on the flip side, this is why ladies may look at the V taper, the healthy man. He's got he looks like he can provide and provision for, take care of you. They're strong, etc., etc. And then there'll be those levels of attraction there. Do you see what I mean? So both parties will have cues. They're fertility cues.
Unbeknownst to them, it's just
it's unbeknown to them, and it's what it is what they're looking for is signs of health, because it's like, can that person provide a good seed for my baby? And the lady is thinking on that side, and then the guy's saying, is she healthy to give birth? Do you know what I mean? But this goes back years before we get into any social construct and stuff. But they believe in that, which I think if you look around, I won't name who it is. I remember someone the other day that a hot guy went past on the bike and their heads turned, and I clocked him. I caught you. So I won't name who that person is, but I could see straight away. That was just their reaction. It's like, oh, he's hot.
Yeah.
She didn't shout out and go, oi, oi, do this and do like that kind of people.
And come home with me.
Yeah. It didn't do any. It wasn't crass or anything, but it was like they was on their phone and they went, and I just clocked him and I went, oh yeah. He went, it's hot. Do you know what I mean? So this happens on both sides, and people shouldn't be shamed for it. It's natural. I know that even with my wife, we've had these discussions. There are ladies that I find incredibly attractive. The difference is discipline. And I know that she'll find people, I'll clock her and she'll see, he's attractive. There's nothing wrong with that. It stops when the discipline stops. Do you see what I mean? And I think we've got to be careful of having those conversations in and around shaming and stuff like that.
Beautiful way to put it. Instead of like, hiding this part of ourselves. Like, yeah, that's a good looking woman, or that's a good looking man.
But there's decorum and boundaries.
Yeah, the discipline coming in and kicking in, because that is how you are married for 21 years. I mean,
Mm.
you're a good looking man. Your wife is absolutely stunning. I'm sure you both get your share of looks from people. And, for you to be able to push through, everything that you guys have built, the 21 years, that's very remarkable. I mean, hats off to you.
Thank you. As I said, none of this is easy. I'm never going to pretend that. I mean, the other side you see, and I understand why people on social media, you get people that will say they got the perfect life, but behind closed doors, both parties are miserable. It's like, how do you get them to come together to find middle ground? I mean, I'll give you a really good example. Like me and my wife went to marriage counselling for 6 months back in 2015. After we lost the children, the busy, everything got to the top, the IVF, it just got too much. So we split up for a period of time for 3 months, and we got back together and we went to marriage guidance. And the lady that we went to see, she thinks it's okay that marriages have bickering. You do sit there and death by a thousand cuts and pick them up. Like when you see people that dig each partner. It doesn't matter if you're in public or a little dig. That is just damage over time. It's like a death by a thousand claps.
Mm.
Each time, and it cuts away. And I'm like, I said to them, if that's marriage, fuck marriage. You can have it back.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm not interested in bringing my wife down and having constant bickering and sniping and digging and all that. That's not what I'm interested in. And that was a really good thing. The lady was shocked, and I'm thinking, you're a marriage guidance and you're saying that's acceptable. But I think that's part of the problem. Because if you're disrespecting each other in that way, whether it's privately or publicly, how can you have a healthy relationship? And I'm sorry, I know there'll be people out there listening who may be in those situations, but you can stop it. It's a choice. You can both sit down at the table and have that conversation and work out what are these underlining issues that need to be addressed.
Mhm. I love that. It all starts with communication. I feel
Yeah,
like one of my biggest goals this year and next year and forever is just becoming a better communicator, because really is everything,
yeah,
in business, in friendships, in relationships, in anything. I mean,
yeah,
I feel saddened by the fact that I wasn't paying more attention to it in the past,
mm,
but if we can all just learn a little bit more about how to communicate properly, I think that will solve a lot of issues.
yeah. I think what we've got to do is if we can understand both, it really what it comes down. This is how simple it is, but on a complex level. You meet the needs of your partner. Your partner meets the needs of yours. Done. That's it. That is it. But it becomes more complex, right? Because the undercurrents, to having children and da 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 da, there's so much going on, and the resentment that builds up over time in
Yeah.
relationships. But that's really what it is. It's a needs met handshake. I meet your needs, you meet mine. Reciprocation. Job done. That's it. But we make it complex because we're humans, right? Humans are not, you can't stick them in a spreadsheet. They come in all different shapes and sizes, different psychologies and everything else. But really, it's finding compatibility. Who are you compatible with?
Yeah, you're right. So where's Men Plus 40 going? Tell us a little bit, give us a little sneak peek of what you're trying to accomplish with this. And yeah, anything you can tell us.
So I've started the project. When I started it, I've been thinking about it for a while, but it really started to get going about 6 months ago once I started to get everything together. So the first stage is we're still very low in terms of reach on Insta at the moment. But me, it's like we've done nearly 1,000 shows. Do I care? No, I just keep going, right? So I've got a plan. So we build the Instagram, let's say to 50 to 100,000. Because then when I launch the additional podcast, nothing changes with seller sessions. Everything stays the same. But I do one show a week on the podcast because I also want to bring in authors like Robert Greene. I want to bring in David Goggins and stuff. So I
Yeah.
have to show them something. So if I've got 200 or 300 reels on Insta and there's a following there, it's going to be easier to get those guests on. And that will
Mhm.
be mixed with round tables. And we can talk about things like intersexual dynamics. We can talk about the polarities, the masculine and the feminine, and have men and women on, right? We can talk about hypergamy. We can talk about all of the different things. We can talk about male nature. We can talk about female nature. We can talk about manipulation and shaming tactics and and really start to go into those conversations. But I think it's important it's a round table with both parties coming together. But it'll be mixed, book authors, musicians will come in. Who else? I might actually bring in some porn stars as well. Meaning is that teaching men to be better in the bedroom and things like that. It won't be disgusting or anything like that. It's just having certain conversations that they can improve on.
That's interesting. I look forward to, learning more about your project, and I follow it greatly. I think this is so amazing that you're doing this for the world, and it's
Well,
always
I'm
a
not doing
pleasure.
it. I'm not doing it for the world because what I want to do is I want to build this first, and so once I got to a certain level on the podcast, then the brand comes as well. Cheryl's been working, formulating some products because I want to do masculine male grooming products. Why? Because masculine men do not have time to sit down with 20 pots every night and do their, and it's not very attractive for a woman as well, right? If he's taking longer to get ready. The idea is there's the minimum effective dose. So if you can do, so because you notice fingernails, nose hair, teeth, feet, odor, neck where it hasn't shaved properly, I need to do mine. All of these different things. So I want to do like a men's care range that you spend 1 minute on each of them. So each product you only need a minute, and then if you do that once, twice a week, you get the minimum effective dose. Because you're never going to get these guys to be 100% all the time. But let's see if we can get them to a certain level where they go, do you know what? I will invest 3 to 5 minutes a week on self-care and not feel a way about it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, wow. All the women listening, you hear this? 5 minutes a week
But
for
yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying because ladies will put a lot more in. But 3 minutes is better than zero. So if you provide some products where people can spend 3 minutes at a time, right, or 1 minute each, maybe 1 minute 30. What I'm trying to do is like the maximum output for the least amount of input, because if you don't, you won't do it anyway. Because you're never going to get guys to sit there and go for a tub of pots religiously every night before bed. It's just not going to happen. But at least if we can get people to do it some of the way there, because that's another thing in relationships as well. Because if you're in a relationship and you've let yourself go, that's very unattractive when he comes over and he stinks of BO or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's just it's really, it comes down to the self-care elements where you can take care of that.
like you said just by implementing this 1, 2, 3 step, even if it's a minute or 5 or 10 a week,
Yeah.
it will get people thinking like, oh, this is something I need to do. And once
that's
well,
not having showers every day. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about certain things that you would do in taking care of yourself. Like looking after yourself. There's certain things that you can do where you don't have to spend a huge amount of time on them, but you need to spend some amount of time on them, right? And if you've got products to take care of some of that window for you, then you're still meeting your masculine needs and not feel a bit silly by having, spending too much time on it. Because most ladies I speak to, they find it highly unattractive if a guy is sitting there and she's waiting for him to get ready. It should be the other way around, right? She gets out, she looks beautiful, comes out, and you say how great she looks and how fantastic, and gets compliments. If he comes out, he's like an hour later and you're sitting there going to sleep. It's not really good. Do you know what I mean?
no, this was so great, Danny. I'm so happy that you took this project on, and I look forward to seeing it grow and expand. And thank you for joining us today on Seller Sessions.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure. How can people find you, Mr. Danny?
With the Men Plus 40, as I said, just started on Insta. There's about 30, 40 reels on there at the moment. We only got like 130 followers at this stage. I didn't want to bring it up, but you said we're going to bring it up. So if you want to check it out, I'll get Ninja Watchers. I know there's people not subscribing, but searching to come back and check it out. They don't want to admit that they're watching the content. But no, but the whole idea about it for me is let's have a better dance between both parties. Let's put aside a lot of this drama. I know what we've been through before. I know the 50s, the 60s and stuff like that. I totally get that. But it's 2022. Let's level up. Let's put the past behind us where we can and just be better humans.
Beautiful. Thank you, Danny. We'll see you this whole week, right? Tomorrow.
I'll be back here tomorrow or Wednesday, I think, and then Sharon's back here Thursday.
Awesome. Thank you
All
for
right.
being with us today.